Howdy, everyone. Matt here. I got a question for you. Do you think it's appropriate for physical therapists to perform manipulations, those high velocity, low amplitude ones? Let's talk about it. All right, everyone. First and foremost, my name is Matt. I am Matt the PT, coming at you with another video, another topic of something from the physical therapy world. And this one is about joint manipulations. You know, those high velocity, low amplitude ones, those things where you grab somebody by a joint and you cause that little pop in there. So do you think PTs are appropriate to do it? Now, I am going to say this right off of the bat. Adjustments are what chiropractors do. So you probably see those on your feed. It comes up on my TikTok feed all the time. But physical therapists, we don't do adjustments because that is a protected term with chiropractors. We can do manipulations. So we do manipulations of joints. But I want to talk about something that is not spoken on a lot or very much at all. And that is the safety of them. Now, I am not talking about are they safe or not. Okay. I'm not talking about that because it's very easy for it to say like, oh, are manipulations safe? Somebody can say yes, somebody can say no. They can say, well, it depends upon this and that. I'm not talking about that because driving is not safe. Okay. Driving itself is not always safe. And you can say driving is safe when you do certain things. That's what I'm talking about. The safety of when to do it. That is what's missing. Okay. That's like with driving. Should someone drive if they're under the influence of something, if they're in a very heightened emotional state, if the weather is really bad, if it's in a vehicle that they are not familiar with? There are aspects of that. You can say very easily, no, you don't need to drive under the influence of something. You don't need to drive when it's icy and you can't get on the road. No, this car has a lot of horsepower that you've never driven before. No, you don't need to be operating it. So there are times that driving can become very dangerous and times when driving is safe. And that is what we're missing. Like this aspect of it, of saying, when is it safe to do that? And in these videos I see online, they're often my feed gets all these chiropractic videos. They want to justify so much of what they do in manners of saying of how safe they are, but they miss out on this other part that I'm going to get to in a minute. But the first way and really some of the biggest thing that they say of how they defend how safe it is saying we have thousands of hours in the classroom. We have thousands of hours that we spend in school learning how to do these. And PTs, so if a PT wants to do it, they only go do a weekend course. They just go to this little weekend course that they 20 some odd hours, and then they go out there and they start trying to pop people's backs and necks and all that stuff. And that's how you get hurt. And I had even one of them said, oh, never let a PT do that to you because I had to fix all the stuff that they did. Okay. That is not actually correct. Okay. Because I'm going to talk about this. In PT school, there is a good part of it that is involved with doing any kind of hands-on manual type stuff. We learn how to assess the body, joints and muscles. We learn how to do that. We learn how to put our hands on people to do that, how to perform mobilizations and some manipulations, how to assess a joint, how to do certain special tests. We spend a lot of time doing that. But I'm going to say this. We don't spend a vast majority of time because not every physical therapist goes into orthopedics. We all don't. So yes, there are some of us that go into orthopedics like I do, but we have others that go into pediatrics or maybe neuro or maybe geriatrics. Maybe they go work with animals. Maybe they go do vestibular therapy. They're not in those environments where they need to utilize manipulation a lot. Okay. So does it make sense to spend a lot of time in school learning something that you're probably not going to use when you get out start working? And I will say this about school. School sets the foundation for everything. You learn a little bit about a lot of things. And then as you get out and start practicing, that's when you specialize more. So yeah, you learn how to do some stuff in school. And if you want to do more, yes, you can take those courses with someone who is highly skilled and trained, and you can learn a lot more to be able to perform them. You know what? I would like you to manipulate that like button and the subscribe button. It's going to help out the channel so much. Back to the video. The big part of safety that, again, I kind of spoke about earlier, is that is overlooked, is knowing when it's the proper intervention to do, because a manipulation is an intervention. It's no different than like dry needling, heat, ice, rest, exercise, any of that. It's an intervention that you do. It's not the whole thing. It's an intervention. It's knowing if and when the person may need it. And the second part of that is understanding, is the person someone who is appropriate to do it on? I will tell you this. When we first start learning about manual therapy, so mobilizations and manipulations, we spend so much time on understanding when it is not appropriate to do it, when it is not. So if a patient has something like osteoporosis or osteopenia, maybe they have a connective tissue disorder, maybe they have a bleeding disorder, they're on a blood thinner, maybe they have an active infection, maybe they have an active cancer, they have some of those things going on, we are not going to do it, or you're going to proceed with so much caution in doing them. Now, people will try to justify with chiropractors. They're like, oh, well, they do like x-rays. Well, they do an x-ray, and some of them will say, we do this x-ray to see if it's appropriate. Okay. The interesting thing with that, there's not a lot of evidence that supports that. Okay. There's not a lot of evidence to support that those x-rays are going to be beneficial to say yes or no, and I was doing it. And I've heard stories of them being manipulated. Things like they'll slip something under your foot and go like, oh, look, you're all off. Or maybe you stand in one position and go, oh, look, the curve is off. I have heard those heard those things happening, but that is not an appropriate way to understand if someone is appropriate to do it. Again, we're going to start out looking at that history. If you have some of those things in your history that kind of send up a flag, no, we're not going to do it, because you know why? We don't want to have an adverse event. That's the things that people talk about it, especially the biggest one are strokes. So somebody breaks that carotid artery in there by doing a cervical manipulation or doing something in the spine, hurting somebody, and this bad thing happens. And that's what people say so often. But that's the thing. You want to understand when it is appropriate to do that. Another big thing that I will tell you that we do as therapists is that we don't often use a manipulation as the very, very first thing. Very rarely are you going to walk into a therapist to see a PT. And I'm saying that's your first time. You don't know them from Adam. You just walk in there. Are they going to tell you, lay down on the table? There we go. We're just that's going to be the first thing that we do. Most likely not. Yeah, there's probably going to be somebody in the comments going, well, actually, I'm not saying every time, because if it happens one time, then you statistically cannot say it has never happened. But, and I will tell you, I have friends or family or whatnot that will say, hey, this kind of feels like you need to pop it. Yeah, I may do that. But for the vast majority of us, it's not going to be the first intervention, because we can learn so much by moving you. That's one thing I learned with MDT, the McKenzie stuff, is that you monitor a patient so much when they move, especially in the spine. What you're looking for, if you start moving somebody through like mid ranges of the joint and something happens, like, whoa, we got some weird thing that happened. Maybe you started feeling lightheaded. Maybe you started talking a little slurred. Maybe your walking got off. Stop. We are going to get that looked at to make sure it's not something wrong. You're going to learn that. That was one big thing, that you progress people. Also, there's an aspect of it is the repetition, the number of times you may have moved a joint or this, or the spine, that you move them through ranges of motion, and that you're monitoring to see, does anything happen? If you start moving through them again, all of a sudden, oh yeah, you know what? I can't hold my bladder anymore. You know what? We're going to send you off to, something got kind of exposed. We're going to send you to make sure that that's nothing serious. But if you move them through all of those things and nothing happened, okay, what are we probably going to do? Well, big thing, and I want to get your opinion on this. The whole thing with like a pre-manipulative hold. Now, I started a bit of a little ruckus online a while back. I created a page on Physiopedia about pre-manipulative holds, and some people got all kind of butthurt about something I said in it. But one thing I learned back in school was that, and nobody's answered this. No one has really been able to answer an aspect of it. They said before you do any sort of manipulation, put them in a pre-manipulative hold. And so what you're saying is like, if I'm going to do something with somebody's spine or they're on my spine, you put them all the way to the end range and you hold them in that. So we're set you up, and then you're monitoring to see what happens. So does that person start to feel funny, start lightheaded, or symptoms get worse, or what? Does something when you put them in that pre-manipulative hold, what happens? And if something happens, then you don't do it. Now, the reason why people got bent out of shape is I said that it was something that you could document to protect you legally. Some people got all bent out of shape, but the funny thing is, none of them addressed that aspect of it. They started citing all this evidence about like the safety, stuff happening. But I'm like, you're citing case studies in which it never said if pre-manipulative holds were ever done. That was what I was pointing at, that no pre-manipulative hold was documented. No, it was never documented in it. And they were just arguing about how like this, that. I'm like, you missed the point because you can't read it correctly. But if anybody knows, like documenting a pre-manipulative hold like helps you in any kind of case. But there's also something that kind of came out of that I learned. Someone told me about Jeffrey Maitland. So if you know about Maitland and the Maitland approach, that he would put somebody in a pre-manipulative hold, especially the cervical spine, and then he would wait 24 to 48 hours before he actually did the manipulation. And I'm not saying that he left them in that position for 24 hours. No, he said, I will put them in that position, leave them there for 20, 30 seconds or however long, then relax and let them go to see what would happen. Because he said you could have something like arterial bruising that goes on and it may not be present for several hours. And I always thought that was a very interesting thing to say, okay, if that could happen, you put somebody in there, you never actually did the intervention. I did the screening to see if it was safe to do that, and this thing happened. So if you had done it, could it have happened? And possibly something had come from it. But that is what I'm bringing up. No one discusses the process of screening someone to say, is this appropriate? Of starting out to say, okay, we reviewed the medical history and there is nothing in there that says that this person is not indicated to have this done. We have moved this person through all sorts of ranges of motion with this kind of response. So we know it's safe to move their spine. We've put them in the end ranges like we are going to do a manipulation and nothing happened to them. So maybe my question is, it's like if you've done all of that and the patient consents to having it done, there's an aspect. You don't do a manipulation if somebody doesn't want it. That's the thing. So if somebody's like, I don't want you doing that, don't do it. You want to, have that patient autonomy where they choose. If they don't want a manipulation of whatever, they said, don't you dare pop me. I'm not going to do it. But if you've done all of those things over, this is visits. This isn't one thing. This is another thing. This isn't just, oh, this happened within 15 minutes to an hour or whatever. No, this has been many visits that you're checking in and talking with this patient and ensuring that they are safe to do it. That is what we do as therapists. I know that's what I do. That's what a lot of my colleagues have done that do a lot of manual therapy and manipulations. They take that time to ensure that it's safe. You're not going to walk in the door, lay on the table, and out the door. You're not going to get that. And I really, really believe that needs to be spoken about so much more, to really talk about the safety that is involved in the screening. And if someone is not doing that safety, is not screening and screening and screening and screening, there's where the problem lies in them. Anyway, Let me know your thoughts, opinions, and beliefs down in the comments. Do you do manipulations like that? Do you go through any kind of screening and all that with patients to ensure? Or do you just say, you know what, we don't need to do them at all? Let me know down in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel. It doesn't cost you a copay or anything like that. And until next time, take care of yourself. Take care of your patients. I'll see you then.